Okay, so it all started when I was about 16 years old. I think it was the summer after my freshman year of high school. I was on a summer vacation with my family in Montana, and we were hiking through the woods and into the mountains and such. And I was with my two brothers, my mom and my dad. And we were hiking for about a mile to a mile and a half, and then all of a sudden my mom and dad grabbed their nose and have a look of disgust on their face. 5 seconds later, my brothers follow suit and have a look of disgust on their face. And I was completely discombobulated. I had no idea what was going on. They were like, oh my gosh, what is this? Turns out there was a dead skunk 15 feet away from us, and I couldn't smell it. So, you know, I kind of figured that there was something wrong. I didn't think it was nasal congestion, but that's the only thing I thought of, so that's what I blamed it on. However, within the next few months, this happened over and over and over again. I would walk into my house with my brothers or with some of my friends, and my mom would be baking brownies, and they'd be like, oh wow, your mom's making brownies, these are gonna be good tonight. And I'd be like, yeah. And, you know, or I would be with some of my friends, and someone would fart, and they'd be like, oh my gosh, come on y'all, and everyone would do it, and I'd be like, are y'all serious? I don't smell anything, you know? And so after a while, I realized, okay, there's something going on. I can't smell anything. And this persisted for months and months and months. And finally, I was like, okay, this needs to be addressed. And right as I was about to address this with my family, I began to lose my taste. It slowly faded away. And it started with one night. I came back with my family from one of my brother's band concerts, and I decided to make myself a generous bowl of vanilla ice cream at the time, which was my favorite type of ice cream. And it was, you know, Breyers, and it was a half gallon. I almost took the whole thing, and I started eating it, and I was like, this is really bland. Like, I don't taste this at all. Are you sure this is the right kind of ice cream we usually get, Mom? And she was like, yeah. And she took a bite, and she was like, this is my favorite too. And she expressed how good it was and how much she liked it. And I was like, what's going on, you know? And at first, the smell wasn't a big problem to me. I mean, you know, I wasn't real worried about the smell, but when the taste started fading, that's when I started getting worried. I knew there was something wrong. And just like the smell, the taste did the same thing. Eventually, my taste kept getting weaker and weaker and weaker, and I wouldn't be able to taste strong things like soup and, you know, buttered bread and, you know, things of that nature. So I knew once this was happening, something was seriously wrong. I had to address it with my family. So finally, I addressed it with my family. I had mentioned that I was having trouble smelling before this, but then once I finally confronted my parents, I was like, look, I can't taste or smell anything. And they were baffled. They were like, what do you mean you can't taste or smell anything? And I was like, this is, my senses have been fading over the last couple of months, and, you know, I don't know what to do about it. So at first they thought I was kidding, but then they could tell by, you know, my emotion and my conviction that I wasn't kidding. So the first step we took was I went to a pediatrician. And as I assumed, the pediatrician had no answer. She ran a couple generic tests and then referred me to another doctor and said that everything was going to be okay. You know, I'll get it back. You're probably just a little sick. So she referred me to an ENT. And if y'all don't know what an ENT is, it's an ear, nose, and throat doctor. And so I specifically went there to be able to figure out my smell. So he ran, you know, 10 tests or so. You know, I don't know if y'all know, he shoved the big, like, tube up your nose, and he looks around. He said there was no nasal congestion that would have caused this. And so, you know, this was discouraging because he didn't know what was going on. But I was really focused on getting my taste back, because you know, if I could choose one or the other, it would obviously be my taste. So he referred us to a neurologist. And so my mom, my dad, and I went to a neurologist. We talked to him about it. He said that in all likelihood, if it's a problem with my brain, then I probably have a brain tumor. So needless to say, that, you know, that stirred up some emotion. I was nervous. They said I had to get an MRI. And he said that if I do have a brain tumor, it's not going to be a benign brain tumor because it's having an effect on my body. So it would be a malignant brain tumor, and then obviously we'd have a more serious situation on our hands. So I had an MRI. I was, you know, obviously nervous, just along with my family. Turns out I didn't have a brain tumor, so that was quite a relief. So he didn't have any answers. So he referred me to another doctor, a rheumatologist. And a rheumatologist is a doctor who studies inflammations in your body. And so I went to him. I probably took, you know, 50 to 100 tests, and it was pretty demoralizing. I took blood test after blood test after blood test. They examined my urine. I had to walk around with a gallon, like a plastic gallon all day, and I had to pee in that just so they could get a sample of all my urine, and they had no idea. So by now, everyone in my family was pretty much completely discouraged. And my mom decided that she wasn't going to give up. She kept doing some research, and she found out a bit about this world-renowned taste and smell clinic in Philadelphia. It's called the Manel Jefferson Taste and Smell Clinic. And so they made an appointment one Friday afternoon. My mom, my dad, and I went up to Philadelphia, stayed the night. The next morning, we went to this clinic. I took, when I say thousands of tests, I'm not kidding. I took thousands and thousands of taste and smell tests for 5 to 6 hours. They came back an hour after we finished and told us that they had no idea what was going on. So, needless to say, I was completely discouraged. I felt as though if anyone was going to have the answer, they were going to have the answer. They didn't have the answer. However, they diagnosed me with ageusia and anosmia. Anosmia is the inability to smell, and ageusia is the inability to taste. About 0.008% of Americans have smell distortions, and there are a wide range of smell distortions. Of that 0.008%, less than 1% of that group has anosmia. So needless to say, this is a pretty rare case. And on top of that, less than 100 cases of ageusia have been recorded in the United States. So I was like, you've got to be kidding me, I have both of these. And so, it really shook me up. It was a hard time in my life. Some of the side effects of these two conditions are the following. You have a loss of appetite, obviously. If you can't smell the taste, you can't experience the same sensation and stimulation that you usually get from food. You know how you walk into a room and you're like, oh wow, I'm hungry now. Or you look at food and you start salivating. Well, this didn't happen to me anymore. I would see some of my favorite foods and I'd be like, yeah, I don't want to eat. For the first couple of weeks after I fully lost my taste, I probably ate solid food once or twice a week, and only at one meal, and it was a really depressing time in my life. Onset depression is a side effect of this, and decreased libido, because a lot of people say your sense of smell and your libido have a direct correlation. So this was a really tough time in my life, and eventually I got acclimated. I started finding food that I like eating more than others. I like crunchy food. I don't like soft food. I don't like ice cream anymore. I don't like mashed potatoes. I'm sure most of y'all like those. And yeah, so eventually I just got accustomed to it. I got acclimated to it, and I figured that there was just no way it was coming back. And when we were at the Manel Jefferson Taste and Smell Clinic, the doctor said it was highly unlikely that I would regain either one of these senses. And if I was to regain one, it would probably be my sense of smell. But because I can't do anything about it, I've began to find positive aspects of this. I mean, now it's really easy for me to lose weight. If I ever needed to lose weight, I can eat healthy. I can go into the lunchroom and eat a bowl full of broccoli, and I'll be full, and I'll thoroughly enjoy it. And I mean, I guess I can't be affected by any bad smells, so that's definitely a plus too. But recently, not recently, okay, I have 1 minute left. They prescribed me a drug called prednisone, which is a steroid. It's not an anabolic steroid like Seth was talking about, but it's a steroid to reduce inflammation in your body. And I took it maybe a year after I lost my taste and smell when I was still in a depression. It brought back my taste and smell. I was in a state of ecstasy. But you can only take it for a short period of time because it can really affect and damage your liver. And so I decided, okay, yeah, and eventually I had to get off of it. And I went back into a depression, and it was awful. But now I'm taking prednisone again because I feel as though I'm more acclimated to it. I just took it last night. I went and ate hummus. I had it for Thanksgiving, and it was, it made my month. I can't even explain it. You can't understand how much you appreciate these senses until you lose them.